What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is Kyle, aka Clean, here for another tutorial. Now today we are going to tackle how to do a spot color separation with a raster program. Last time we did a vector. Remember, we had this mock-up here that we did for as a proof, and the client signed off on it, and we went ahead and built our films, and we outputted it, and it looked pretty good. But this time, let's pretend that we don't have Illustrator, or that the client gave us, say, a JPEG. So what I'm going to do is turn this all off, turn off all our channels except for our color separations here, and I am going to save this. Save this as, actually, let's save for web. Let's say let's be evil to ourselves. Let's say that the client sent this to us as a JPEG. Ooh, no, don't save it to us as a JPEG. Now, how do I save this as a JPEG? I could do it this way. Actually, I'm going to do it another way so that my sizing doesn't get all messed up. So let's do a save as, and we'll call this now Raster. Chimp Raster. And raster is just for a raster image, meaning it's not vectored, but we are saving that as an Illustrator file. That's just because I'm going to do a conversion here. Let's say that our client gave us a JPEG. So let's open up that raster that we did in Photoshop. We'll hit OK. Now we could use something like this, but let's be evil to ourselves. Let's say they saved this as a JPEG. Alright, so let's close this out, and let's look here. This is our client supplied artwork right here. Let's pretend we don't have any of these other files over here. And so we'll go ahead and open this up with Photoshop. And you'll notice that it's real super clean here. And the reason being is because we did save it, but if we pull in, we'll notice that there is some anti-aliasing going on here. Now, we're going to try to deal with that. There's several ways to approach this design. You'll notice right in here too, it kind of gets soft. The colors change. So how would we approach this as a raster image? Now these eyes actually are not pink, they are white, so let's go ahead and make them white. To make them white, let's do select color range, we'll do that, hit OK, and just fill it in. So, okay, so now we filled it in. I think we might have some pink remnants even. Ooh, yucky, yucky, yucky. But that's how the client gave us this artwork. So what do we do? The first thing I always do to an image is I trim it. And notice I just took it in on the edges there. And then I go to image size. Now I know that the size of this image is okay for me, but you could do a couple things here. One, we want to be working in 300 resolution. I think there's an adage here, crap in, crap out. So if you get a crappy image from your client, you might want to ask for an image at 300 resolution as at size. That being said, sometimes, I mean, you can go all the way down to 200 DPI in here, and if the image is at 200 DPI, it really is not going to be too jaggy along the edges. But I'm going to cancel out. Let's say our work was given to us at 300, but we don't have any layers. Notice here we don't have any artwork layers. So how do we want to approach this? Do we want to, cut this out? We probably do want to cut it out. We probably want to put it on a transparent background, or put it on a white background, or even put it on a shirt color background. So there's a few ways to approach this. Because this is Spot, we could do it like we did our index color separation, and go to index color, go to custom, hit OK, whoops, I meant to choose white, get our blank canvas here, OK, and hit OK, and turn off preview, go back to custom, choose our white, choose our 5 colors here. And this is a real quick and dirty way of doing this. And then our tan, and hit OK. And then let's preview this. And there's really not a lot of change up in here. That's a good thing. So this would be a quick and dirty way of doing it. Now remember, we go to mode, change it back to RBG. Now let's zoom in. What did we just do there? We made hard edges. But you'll notice up in here, there's some weird things going on. So we could then, spend the time on the design, which we really don't want to be doing. Let's turn off anti-aliasing, turn off contiguous, put our tolerance at 0, use the magic wand tool, and kind of go in here and select these colors here, and then use our pen tool just like we would with an index design. And it looks like our art brush is really big, so bring our art brush down. Whoops. We want to deselect, so hold down Alt and deselect the white, and then hit B and go in here and clean up all these edges. Now, I said quick and dirty, but this is why it wouldn't be quick, is if you have to go in and clean up all this stuff. Now we could zoom out, zoom way out, and then, make our brush bigger and go in and clean all this up. It's not a fun thing to do. It's actually kind of time consuming, and that would make it not very quick. But we would get nice hard edges, and a client would be happy and whatnot. There are other ways of doing this though. So I'm going to revert this back, and let's change those eyeballs again. Select color range, choose those eyes, hit OK. Change our foreground. Alright, so we're right back where we were. Remember, we did trim it. Hit OK. Now, I think a better way of approaching this is kind of how you would do a simulated color process. And if you don't know how to do a simulated color process, it's not a big deal. Basically, you'd go select color range, select the color that you want here, do invert. Now I'm going to hold down Shift. What we want to do right off the bat is select all the colors except for white. So now I'm going to hold Alt and undo our white here. And you notice up in here, we're getting halftone values up in there. That's not good. We want that in there. So this is not really feasible. So how else could we approach this? First let's get rid of this background. So what I'm going to do is use my my magic wand tool, and I'm going to set the tolerance pretty high, use anti-aliasing, and select contiguous. And I'm going to go here and I'm going to select all this background, and then I'm going to hit Command or Control Shift I and inverse the selection. And then I'm going to hit Command or Control J. And what that did is bring my selection up into a new layer. So we can turn it off on. You're not going to see a difference until we turn off this back, right? So I'm going to select my background layer, and I'm just going to fill it with a white by hitting Control or Command Delete. And that filled it with a white. So now we have our white here. And let's call this a shirt color. Whoops. If you remember in a previous tutorial, I did my color libraries here, and I found what Hanes tagless, what our shirt color is going to be here. And we were using a dark chocolate. So I went to my Hanes locator, and I found my dark chocolate. Now my dark chocolate is this CMYK value. So I'm going to write this down: 60, 71, 76, 40. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to put those values in for my CMYK. 60, tab, 71, tab, 76, tab, 40. Hit OK. Now you'll see our foreground color is that dark chocolate. And I'm going to hit Alt, Delete, and fill it in with my foreground. So here we have the design on the dark chocolate shirt color. Now I'm going to name my layers. Keep a tidy workspace here. Shirt color, dark, what was it, dark chocolate? Dark chocolate, I believe it was dark chocolate. Let's just double check. Yeah, dark chocolate. Alright, and so this we're going to call artwork. Alright. And so now we have the artwork pulled up onto its own layer. But let's pull in real close again. We notice we have these dirty edges. Oh, so dirty. We don't want that. Really don't want that. So, what do we do? Well, it's fairly simple. We go select color range. Now we're only going to select one color here, and we're going to invert this, and we're going to turn down our fuzziness. Now you notice that this shirt color is coming through when we select this dark, or this brown, this dark brown. The dark chocolate's also coming through. We don't want that on our films. So I'm going to cancel out, and I'm actually going to just turn this shirt color off. Right? So now we have that transparent background. And now we're going to do select color range. And we are going to select our dark color here. Now you notice there's some dark brown coming in here. So let's and what I'm looking at is up in here. So we could turn our fuzziness slider way down, and that actually doesn't look too bad. Another way of approaching this is keeping our fuzzy slider up, which we probably want to do, and hit OK. Now if we go over into our channels, this is where we're actually going to make our spot colors. If we hit create new layer and we look at our new layer here, there's something going on here. Something good going on here. Notice for this spot here, Well, first off, I don't have invert selected, so let's delete that channel. Let's deselect, let's redo this here. Select color range. What I forgot to do is check mark this invert here. So now we have the invert check marked. We click on here, we hit OK. And remember, we brought that fuzziness slider up. So if we zoom in, we're actually going right to the edge. In fact, the anti-aliasing in this design is going to bring it a little bit over. And that's going to be good. That's going to create a, not a trap, the opposite of a trap. I forget what it's called. Anyway, so let's select our channel here. One thing that we can see, now let's deselect this by hitting Command or Control D. One thing we can see here is that we have some of our dark brown in our black. That's not very good. We don't want dark brown there. We only want the dark brown where there's dark brown. So how do we get rid of it? It's actually easier than you would think, especially for a spot color. You can go take your lasso tool, select it, and just fill it in with a white. So to fill in with your foreground color, you hit Alt Delete. Another way of doing that is hitting Shift Backspace. So let's say that that was still there. So we made that selection. Now you hit Shift Backspace, and that brings up the fill dialog. Use white and fill it with 100%. That does the same thing as hitting Alt Delete. So now we deselect it. And if we can see here, we're looking pretty good with that dark brown. So we kind of want to repeat that process. But before we move on, let's go ahead and make this a spot color. And we want to assign it that dark brown. Now, we don't have color selections selected up here. So we don't really know what our colors are. I mean, because previous tutorials we did this mock-up, but let's pretend we didn't do this mock-up and we don't know what these brown and other colors. In fact, this will be a good test to see the difference between Illustrator and Photoshop selecting our colors. So let's go in here, and I would love to pick whatever brown that is, but I don't know what it is. I don't have that proof. So, I mean, we could just go in and just guess. That's one way of doing it, but it's really not going to show up and be exact. So how do we compensate? How do we make sure that we get this right? So the way that a lot of people do it is they double click on their foreground color here, and they do add to swatches. You can do dark brown and hit OK. And you can do this with every single one. So select your eyedropper, select that color, add to swatch, tan. Now you notice it's pasting on to whatever was there before. I mean, that's okay, but really I like to keep a clean workspace, so I'm going to delete those other colors by holding down Alt and clicking on those other colors. So let's continue. Let's select this brown, add to swatches, and we'll call this brown, and hit OK. Then we'll go to white, add to swatches. Remember, a lot of programs, RIP programs, don't like it if you call it white, so I call it white underscore. And then black. And black underscore. Alright, so we have our colors here. There are 5 colors in this design, 6 if we put an underbase under it, and we'll want to do that. But for now, what we could do is do spot color, put this at 85%. That's what I like to do with most colors. And then choose our dark brown up here and hit OK. And call this channel dark brown. And be OK like there. Now, that would get you started in a really good place, but let's say we want to play around with these dark browns. Remember before I said we wanted to match Photoshop with Illustrator's callout. So Illustrator called this callout 4625. Let's just see here what Photoshop calls it. So I'm going to click on this and hit color libraries, and lo and behold, Photoshop called it 4625 as well. So we could click OK, and if we hover over this now, it's still a dark brown. It didn't change anything. What you could do is go to color libraries, hit OK, and bring this. Oops. Oh, I know. I have my color picker on. So, never mind. So, your colors up here are really, it's very much unlike Illustrator. When you make them spot, you're actually making them this color. So, let's just, for instance, go to 10, color libraries, 7514. See, 7514. So that's how you would get your callouts for Illustrator if you're going to go that. For Photoshop if you're going to go that route. So back to creating our channels. Let's go ahead and do our select color range. And remember, we have inverted selected. Let's choose our light brown here. Now, we can adjust our fuzziness slider, and if we get too fuzzy, we get the tan and we get the dark brown. We don't want that. We want just the brown. But if we bring it down too much, what's going to happen is, if we zoom in, notice how it's not touching? That's not good. We want that touching. So I'm going to deselect this by hitting Control or Command D. And now that I'm zoomed in on this brown, I'm going to do Select Color Range. And I'm going to bring this fuzziness up some. And I'm looking at this red here. We can change that red to a matte black, but that's not good. To a grayscale. And that's pretty good. I tend to like just quick mask. And what this is telling us is that this is going up to the red here, or to the black, excuse me, but it's also choosing all this. So how fuzzy do we want to get it? It will depend on what's in this background here. I really don't want it that fuzzy, but it's not going to matter too much. And I'll show you why. First off, where it touches the black, it will only go so far. Even if I move the slider all the way up, you can see it's just barely has some black in there. So we don't want it all the way up, but we do want it probably over 100. And so I'm going to hit OK. Now these marching ants here are not showing the anti-aliasing that's going on when we do select color range. That's a good, it's a good thing and a bad thing. What we're going to do is go to our channel here, and you'll notice that our brown looks good, but now we're having a light brown coverage. If we take our eyedropper tool and we hover over this, look at our K value here. We're actually getting 22% brown and 35% brown here. And we don't want that brown under or anywhere near our tan or our dark brown. So again, we're going to have to get rid of it. Now, because this is a spot, it's actually quite easy to get rid of. There's several ways of doing this. You could do your pencil tool, make sure white's selected, and just delete all this. It's a pretty easy thing to do when it's spot color. That's why a lot of people like spot designs. And then of course you take your brush tool, you make it super huge, and you just get rid of this stuff. Now that's probably a little too big, so let's go down a little. And again, delete, delete, delete. And I missed a little down there. And you always want to be conscious of making sure you get everything. So spot color, I'm going to do 85%. This 85% is just what we see on our monitor. And then that was the brown color, and we'll call this brown. So let's continue. Select color range, and now we're going to do the tan. Now there's some weird stuff happening with this tan. We're getting some selection right around this edges. If we zoom in, which we can zoom in by hitting Control plus while we're in this mode, and then hitting your spacebar and holding it, you can drag around and kind of look around this design as you do your color separation. And ever so lightly we have some tan peeking out the corner here. We don't want that. So we could move our fuzziness slider down. But if we move it down too much, it's not going to touch this black. So as a general rule, you want to pump it up and then just kind of deal with trying to take this area out. So it's better to have colors overlap a little than have gaps in your design. So I'm going to bump this up. I don't know how much. Now, if we notice here, let's see, where is it? This white is kind of pink, and that's our mask. If we made this mask black, it would turn gray. And so we are getting some pickup in this color, in this white, by selecting our tan. And we don't want that. Again, this is going to be a spot color. So I'm going to move this back to quick mask, hit OK. And we're going to make our selection here. And you can see that gray got selected here. And we're going to do this as spot. Again, call it 85 and assign it this tan color here. And call it tan. Now, again, we have this area here that thankfully is not touching. It's an outline, but if it was touching, we'd have to be very careful and start deleting some of these things. There's an easier way of deleting stuff like this. What you can do is go here to your quick selection tool, and my quick selection tool brush was huge, and you can just do a quick selection, and it will do a pretty good job of deleting that. Now, I don't know. Everyone has their own method on how to do that. Like for me, I'd probably deselect. I probably wouldn't go into the white here. So I'd hit Alt and kind of try to take away some of this white. Now that's not really working very well, so I don't think that's a very good method. So I'm going to deselect it. I'm going to grab my magic wand tool. Let's see what that does. Our tolerance here is at 60. So let's bump that down. Let's put it at 20 and see what happens. Now that's a pretty good selection. We also have anti-aliasing on, and that's a quick way there of deleting it. So how do we delete it? We could fill it again with Alt Delete, and that would change it to our foreground color. And let's deselect and just look. You know what? That's a pretty good method. So let's do that again. Alt Delete. And here, Alt Delete. And let's look at it. It's looking pretty good, but if we move up here, we still have that line. That line will show up in our color separations or our film. So because it's so far away from our design, what we could do is still use our magic wand tool and turn off contiguous and, try to select all these dots, but you have to have pretty good eye-hand coordination to do that. And you notice it's kind of messing up in here. So at that point, our magic wand tool is probably not the best tool to use to clean that up. We could use a brush tool, and I think that's what I would use, or an eraser tool. Before we use brush, so let's this time use the eraser tool. Now your eraser tool will make it the color of your background. So we just want to swap these. And if you hit D, it makes it default. That would swap them too. But we want this as our background is white now. And we line this up. Maybe a little too close there. I just undid by Control Z. Now let's line that up. Now let's zoom out some and just clean that up. These little things will help on press. You may not think that this stuff will show up. Sometimes it won't, but if you can save the press operator anytime at all on the press, you want to do it. Because whatever you do on your computer, it's going to take 4 or 5 times longer to do out on press. So if they had to tape all that off, imagine someone sitting underneath the press trying to put tape underneath the screen to tape all that off. Or if someone saw on the films, they're trying to scrape off those films. It's a lot easier to do it on the computer. I recommend you do so on the computer. Now it looks like our tan is looking good. Let's go back to our RBG channels. So we have dark brown, brown, tan. We need our white and we need our black. So let's go color, select color range, and select our white. Now again, we're going to play around with this fuzziness slider. I tend to like to go more than needed. And let's look to see what happened there. We're looking okay. Notice that we do have that pink in that design. That pink is not very friendly. So when we select our black, we'll probably have to deal with that pink at that point. But for now, we're looking pretty good. It's kind of a good idea to kind of just get a mental picture of where that pink is. Like, we could actually try to include this lighter pink. In fact, I'm going to try to do that. So I'm going to deselect here, and I'm going to do select color range, and I'm going to choose my white again. But holding down shift, and you see that plus comes up, I'm also going to select that pink. Now, something happened here. We did get some selection inside what isn't white, and I don't like that. So we can mess around with our fuzziness slider. And actually, that's probably where we want to be. Now I'm seeing little tiny dots around here. But our pink is selected here. So for our white, we'll probably bump it down so that we don't get any selection up in here. And we'll hit OK. And we'll create our channel. And lo and behold, we did get dots in there. Well, you know what? Let's clean it up. So we'll stick with our decision. Go to solidity, make it 85%. Choose our white up here. Hit OK. Call it white. Put an underscore because RIP software sometimes doesn't like white. And last time we used our magic wand tool. Let's try to do that again. And that actually doesn't look too bad. It's not getting too much up in here, which is a good thing. And so I'm going to probably stick with this magic wand tool. And I'm going to hit delete and deselect. Now we just want to double check, pull way in. Notice we have a dot down there. That's weird. So let's use magic wand tool again and delete that out. Now I'm still seeing some weirdness up in here. Magic wand tool's not going to work for that because it's too dark. But we could give it a try. If we select that, whoops, I selected the white. That's very good hand coordination. Actually, let's just zoom in. Alt D. Select the magic wand tool. And we'll select some of these. Now, what happened there is that we also got some of our design up in here. We don't want that. So I'm going to deselect and I'm going to choose let's do our eraser tool this time, and we'll make it real big. The way I make my brushes or my eraser tool real big is I use the brackets on my keyboard. And I'm just going to delete all that away. All right. And again, when you use the eraser tool, it does your background color, so make sure your background color is white. Let's go back to our RBG, and now let's go into our black. So select color range and choose our black. And just as suspected, we're getting some of this dark brown selection as well. That's actually okay. Really what we want to make sure that we get is this pink. We want to change this pink into a black. So I'm going to hit Control plus and zoom into my design. And then hold down my spacebar key. And I'm going to look here and make sure that we're, again, zooming in, make sure that we're getting all this pink as black. So I'm going to hold down Shift, that brings up that little plus sign, and I'm going to choose some of this pink. But notice we got some of this tan now, so hit Alt and that brings up the minus sign. And that's looking pretty good. You can continue to do so, but it actually lightened our black up some. So I'm going to hit Control Z and undo that. And we're looking pretty good here. This fuzziness might be a little too much, so let's bring it down slightly. And let's make sure that we have that blacks chosen really well. Alright, so I'm going to hit OK on that. Notice our pink here is now selected. That's good. That's what we wanted. So we'll do our create our channel here. Call it spot. Again, 85%. That's just for our monitor purposes. Make it black. Call it black. And put an underscore for the RIP software not to freak out. Alright, so we're looking pretty, we're not looking very good. So again, we have this selection around here and we want to get rid of that. We don't want that on there. Again, we have our options. I'll probably do magic wand tool just to start. We'll delete that. And if we notice here, I didn't get everything. We can still see some shadow. Let's see what value that is. That's a 2% value. So 2% value on that. That's not too bad. 2% you probably won't be able to hold onto a screen, but people working with the film are going to see it, and they might want you to re-output the film. So the way I would correct this one, again, there's all different ways of correcting these things. I'd go into my adjustments, go to my levels, And we can either choose a white. So I went on the white eyedropper and made that other color white. Or, so I'm going to undo that by hitting Control Z. We got that back. Or we can move this white here down. And I think I'm going to move this white here down. Now, when we did that, our midtones went away too. So we want to kind of put that back where it was. Probably around here. And hit OK. Now that got rid of most of it, but we still have that outline going right around here. And that will show up on the films. It might not hold on our screen. So what I'm going to do is take my eraser. Well, let's use the pen tool this time. Use something different every time. Why not? So, you notice when I did that, let's go back up to our levels. We're getting, let me do my eyedropper. That's 0, that's 2%. So when I use my pen tool, that's a good lesson here. Make sure that your white is either all the way up in that corner, or you can hit D on your keyboard, and that would make it all the way up in the corner there. So let's go back to our brush tool or our pen tool. Brush or pen tool would work fine. Notice we're filling in with the foreground. And we just go through this and delete those little lines. Now we want to preview this. Let's just double check all our layers. There's no random, and I'm looking here at this K value when I do this. I'm looking for any kind of value in there, and I'm not seeing anything. Not seeing anything. That's good. It's a good thing. And then we go to our brown. I always want to check that, because if you get a 2%, it may not hold onto your screen, but brings red flags to the screen printer, like the color separator doesn't know what he's doing. So we're looking pretty good here. Now let's try to mimic what we're going to see on press. Now we're not going to see a white background on press here, and so I can see a problem already. If we zoom up in here, our brown's not connected there. Now we have a couple ways of fixing that. We could go to our RBG channel. Nope. A couple ways of fixing that. You know what, I probably erased it by accident. We also notice that these aren't touching absolutely super well, and that's where our pink values are. There is color in there, so let's go into our black here, and you see there is values in there. It's just not completely black, and that's fine. I mean, if you want it completely black, you could take your magic wand tool, take your tolerance down to maybe 10%, and select some of this stuff. Let's turn anti-aliasing off here, and kind of start selecting some of these. Now that tolerance is probably not enough. Let's bump it back up to 30% and select it, and select it, and select it, and select it. And we're looking pretty good. Notice our white got selected. So let's bring this tolerance down to say 0%, and use this magic wand tool. Hold down Alt and deselect the white. And let's deselect some of that real light white. Now we wanted to fill in those gaps, so to do so we can hit Shift backspace. That brings up our fill dialog. We change this to black, at 100% and hit OK. And that just filled it in with black. If we take our eyedropper tool, we'll notice that, take off caps, whoops, eyedropper tool. Take our eyedropper tool, we'll notice that our K value isn't 100%, but at 97% you probably won't see a difference. So that's good. Now we did have a problem over here. Yeah, these white values. Now there is black in there, it's just a halftone, so let's have our black selected and see. Yeah, it's 100% black on that white, so that's just, now it's 0%. So let's go to our brown, and that's 0, so that is the gap. Let's take a little mental note of where that is. Let's use our magic wands tool and just kind of do the same thing we just did. Let's delete our brown, and then we'll make a new brown channel. So let's deselect this, go to our RB channels. We're just redoing our brown, and we're going to bump this fuzziness up, and we're going to zoom in here by hitting Command or Control plus, and we're going to zoom in here real tight. We want to see where that was. So it was right up in here. So we're going to bump up this fuzziness of the brown a little, and maybe even hit shift and kind of get some of these halftones in here and really push it up in there and hit OK. Now you'll notice all those halftones are selected. So we'll put this at 85 and give it our brown color and call it brown. Now all we want are the eyelids, so let's delete that. And a good way of doing this selection would be to zoom way in here, going into our magic wand, bumping our tolerance up to 60, clicking contiguous and anti-aliasing, and then looks like 60 is a little too much. Let's go down to 30, and yeah, 30 is good. And then we're going to inverse this selection by hitting Control Shift I, and then we're going to fill it by hitting Shift Backspace with a white. And notice I screwed up, so let's go back. That's why I have my things here. Select this inverse, actually select magic wand, and we're going to go back to our tool here and select that one too. Now we're going to Shift Control I, inverse that selection, Shift Backspace, and fill it with white. So now we want to look at this design and make sure that we fixed what was going on up in here. So we have our RBG turned off, and you notice we fixed in that corner, and we fixed where it was you know, there was little tiny gaps in there. And we did that by using the fuzzy slider. We just pushed that fuzzy slider up higher than we did before, and that's looking pretty good. You'll notice there's no pink in this. All that pink was taken out. It looks a little light in there, but again, those are halftones. So if we go to our eye, to our tan and use the eyedropper tool, that's 70% on one dot. So that will be filled in. So you don't need to get too meticulous on this, even though for this tutorial I just kind of did. And then we're pretty much ready, but I always like to preview this on the shirt color. And so to do that, I clicked a new channel here, and I give it my shirt color. Now, shirt color, we already decided, we already wrote down those CMYK values. So I go to my C value, hit 60, tab, and this is what I wrote down earlier, 76, 40, hit OK. Call this spot and name it shirt color. Hit OK. Now the shirt color I accidentally kept at 50. Let's make it 100%. And throw it up here as our base layer. Now if we look at this, it looks pretty good. One thing though is that we haven't added a base yet. That could be a problem. This tan here is not as bright as what it should be. Same with this white. I did make it at 85%. It should be at 100%, right? And that would be a bright white. But it's not a bright white because we don't have a base. So I'm going to call it 80%. We could even make it down to, say, 65%. And that would really dramatically kind of show that brown shirt coming through. What happens is when you screen print without a base, that shirt acts like a sponge and it just really soaks in the ink, and those fibers start to show through the white. So you could hit the white twice, but it's actually better to make an underbase. So this 5 design, since we're putting it on a dark garment, is really a 6-color design. And again, we did proof it as 6 colors way back in our other tutorial. So let's create this underbase. We have our shirt color, we have our dark brown. Okay, so everything's good. One thing to do to make an underbase, there's lots of different ways you can make an underbase. You could look at some of your channels up in here. So that might be a good channel. Now, that might be good. That might not be good. So I'm not really seeing a good RBG channel here. So let's create our own. How do we do that? It's actually quite easy. We can select, hold down Control or Command, and select our colors. And this design is okay, so we have our selection here, and we could just inverse this. And that could be a viable base, but we didn't choke it. So we want to choke it, so let's choke it. So again, we have, let's deselect this. Let's go through and select everything. I'm not seeing our black. Oh yeah, black, but okay. So let's deselect. Let's choose our white, our tan, our brown, our dark brown. Okay, notice I didn't choose the black. And that's on purpose because you never want to lay a base down under your black. So to choke it, we go to our select here and we hit contract. And since our image resolution is at 300 here, if that was at 200, you probably just want to choke it a pixel. But because it's at 300, I'm actually going to choke it 2 pixels. Whoa, 2 pixels. The spot color, it's not going to make a big difference. Now, you'll notice up in here, we had some weird things happen up in here. So, we can use our lasso tool, and we can hold down Shift and just kind of go in and, you know, select all these things and make sure. In reality, it's not going to make too much difference, but we want to keep this kind of tight. So Now you could create a trap and stuff on here. I showed you how to do that in Illustrator. And you can do it on this too. Might make my tutorial much longer, so I'm not gonna trap this for this purpose. So my selection's looking pretty good here. Let's just make sure that it's choked. Yeah, it is choked. Not by very much though, but that's a good thing. So we'll go ahead and make our selection. Now it's inverse, so Command Control D to deselect, and then hit Command or Control I. And that's looking pretty good. It is choked now. So let's do spot color and do 100. Whoops, this is our base. So my base I always put at 65%. We'll use a white base and call it underbase. Now I do see a problem here. Our dark brown, we probably don't want to put 100% base under our dark brown. Alright, so what I did there, what I did there was, what I wanted to do was get my selection, but not choke it here, but choke it there. So the way I did that was, what I did was I made my underbase selected here, which is choked, and then I hit Control Alt and deselected my dark brown selection that I inverted, and that got me the selection I wanted. So that's good. The reason why I wanted to do that is because I want to go ahead and make a halftone for my underbase. So if we look at our underbase here, this is where the dark brown is. And where there's dark brown, we don't want to lay a big, thick, solid base. In fact, we probably want the base, I don't know, maybe at 20% or so. So how do we do that? Well, first we make the selection. That's what I spent all that time just now doing. And then we hit Shift Backspace to bring up our fill dialog. And how do we want to fill this in? Well, it's all black, so we want to fill it in with white. And we want about a 20, maybe 30%. Well, let's call it 25%. And this is really just knowing how your ink lays on a shirt. But let's say we wanted 25% base underneath that dark brown. Now, it is possible you just don't want a base underneath that dark brown. You could fill it in with white at 100% and hit OK. And you'll see it just got rid of that base. But I'm going to go back here. And what I'm going to do is bring back up my fill dialog, Shift Backspace, and instead of 0%, I'm going to fill it in with white. I'm going to fill it in with 75%. And what that's going to make this is 25% black. And that means, so if I take my eyedropper tool, my K value now is 25%. And that just means we'll have a 25% dispersed dots over whatever LPI we decide to make this. If you're doing it on a manual, 6-head manual, you'd probably do it at 45 LPI. If you're doing it on a, say, I don't know, 230 screens on an automatic, you do it at 55 LPI. But if you want to get super high resolution, so to speak, what you could do is make that, 380 screens, which would be kind of silly. You wouldn't ever really want to go that high for this design, and do it at 85 LPI. But really, there would be no need to do that. One thing to note, that you may get finer detail when you get your screens higher, but you're laying less ink onto the shirt. In other words, that screen, because there's so much silk on that screen, it's actually preventing ink from going through. And if you're a manual press operator, the higher that screen count, the more pressure you gotta force that ink to go through. And so higher screen meshes aren't always a good thing. You may get more detail, but it'll really kill your press operator, especially if he's on a manual. So that's something to take into consideration here. So I'm thinking we're looking pretty good. We could dark or lighten the base around these other browns and tans and whatnot, but I don't think we really need to. So at this point, we can save our selections here, or we can get rid of them. I tend to like to keep my selections, but this one I never even use, so there's no point having it. But this one I'll save, but we won't, when we output our films, we won't actually use that. So let's mimic what we're going to see on press right now. So the first thing we're going to see is the shirt color. The shirt color is a dark brown, and we'll see that when we lay down our underbase here. Our underbase is going to be soaked up quite a bit by this brown shirt, so it's not going to be a bright white. It's going to look kind of like this. And then we'll lay down our dark brown, our tan, our black, and our white. And that's kind of the screen order you'd want to put it in. Now, there are several ways of outputting this. So let's go to, so remember, we're still working on our original here. So the first thing we want to make sure we do is not save it over our original. So let's put raster final output and hit save. And okay, so you know, that's our raster final output. So what I would do from here is delete my RBG, delete my selection, delete my t-shirt color. So all I have are my actual channels here. And I would go to File, Save As, and save it as a Photoshop DCS 2.0. That's going to save a EPS file that we can then import into Illustrator to print it out. Now, I always change this TIFF to 8 bits. Single file, DCS, no composite. I deleted my composite there. Keep everything else pretty much default. Hit OK. And this is now not working. Good thing we saved it. So, did it save? No, it didn't even save it. So, we did save it right before we went to output our Photoshop DCS. Excuse me. So let's delete our composite again. Delete our selection. Just goes to show, like, if you've been working on a design for a while, just save it. Even if you save it as like version 1 or 2, like, just get some progression in there so that if power goes out, you get hit by lightning, something crazy, your computer stops working, you know, you have at least some of your work saved. So, but luckily there, I had saved it right before it crashed. So again, we're going to save this as a Photoshop DCS. I called it raster final output, and we're going to save. Now I'm going to create 8-bit here. We just went over all this, so it should save this to my desktop now, which it did. So that's good. Now, at this point, this is where I would bring up Illustrator and bring out my template, my film template, hit new, and do File, Place. Go to my desktop, find that EPS that I did, and place it in here. And I would line it up to my registration marks. I'd put in my header. So we called this chimp ATS front, and I'm just going to call this raster just to differentiate it from the other one I did. And then I would do my callouts. So for this callout was underbase, underbase. Now that changed it to all white. So what we can do here is just change underbase. This is only for on the computer monitor. It's not going to actually show up on your screens. And let's call this dark brown. And you guys get the idea. I'm not sure I need to go through all this, but I guess I will. Brown. This will be 10. This will be black. And then this will be white. And you notice my white's not going to show, so I always make it a weird color. Again, that's only for my monitor. It's not going to affect my films. Alright, so now we have a linked file in here, and I would save as, and let's save this as an Illustrator file, and chimp raster final output AI, and save it. And I would include my linked file. It's going to make your file size a lot bigger, but it's a good thing in this case, because if you ever need to send this file or you move the document, that linked file will be saved, will be encompassed into the file. Otherwise, you might have to go find it again. So at this point, you could go print, and it's just like you're printing from Illustrator. Well, you are printing from Illustrator. So you do output and separations, host space, notice no CMYK. We do have a process black. I went through this before. Let's make that registration here. Alright, so if we go to a file, print, output, now we'll look, our process black isn't there. So we'll go to graphics, color management, summary. We're looking all good. Hit print. And this is what our films are going to look like. Now, if we had a RIP software, our underbase would be halftone dots. It's not going to be. It's going to be just gray. But it's good to know. And we're looking good. So that's how you do a raster color spot separation. If you have any questions, please use the comments, like, and subscribe. Talk to you later.